Welcome back to the Badass Literature Society, where badasses come together to rate and review novels recommended by you. Hi, I'm Michael.
This is Barbara.
And I'm Lauren. This month we read Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. It was recommended to us by Cassie on Facebook. This episode will have a trigger warning for content related to suicide.
Talk about the author a little bit first. Fredrik Backman is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of A Man Called Ove. My grandmother asked me to tell you she's sorry. Britt Marie Was Here, Beartown, Us Against You, and of course, Anxious People, as well as 2 novellas and 1 work of nonfiction. His books are published in more than 40 countries. He lives in Stockholm, Sweden with his wife and 2 children. You can connect with him and see his information on Facebook and Twitter. He's at Bachmanland, or on Instagram, he's at BachmanSK. Barbara, you want to tell us a little bit about the book?
The book was originally published on April 25th of 2019. It is considered psychological fiction or humor for the genre. I can't remember now. I looked up the genre and one of the genre was just like book. And I was like, oh, okay, so super helpful. It is currently 336 pages and it currently has a 4.2 on Goodreads, 4.6 on Barnes & Nobles, 4.4 on Amazon, and a 4.6 on Audible. It has been nominated for the Goodreads Choice Award for Fiction in 2020, the Book of the Month, Book of the Year Award in 2020, the Rusa Codes Reading List for Relationship Fiction in 2021, the Crime Fiction in Translation Dagger for Neil Smith in 2021, but it has not won any awards as of this recording. So we do think it's important for readers to know what, if any, representation is in the books we read. So for this book, there is 1 main POC character, main LGBTQ plus characters, and main characters with disabilities.
All right, Lauren, you want to give us a brief synopsis before we jump in?
Yes, so my synopsis is that it's a hostage drama with a sprinkling of romance, humor, and life lessons. Full stop. That's it.
Drop the mic.
that is a. I don't think you can really call that a synopsis.
Short and sweet.
Yeah.
So the back of the book, basically, it is. So I'll just do the back of the book. But viewing an apartment normally doesn't turn into a life or death situation, but this particular open house becomes just that when a failed bank robber bursts in and takes everyone in the apartment hostage. As the pressure mounts, the 8 strangers begin slowly opening up to one another and reveal long-hidden truths. First is Zara, a wealthy bank director who has been too busy to care about anyone else until tragedy changed her life. Now she's obsessed with visiting open houses to see how ordinary people live, and perhaps to set an old wrong to right. Then there's Roger and Anna-Lena, an Ikea-addicted retired couple who are on the never-ending hunt for fixer-uppers to hide the fact that they don't know how to fix their own failing marriage. Julia and Ro are a young lesbian couple and soon-to-be parents who are nervous about their chances for a successful life together since they can't agree on anything. And there's Estelle, my personal favorite, an 80-year-old woman who has lived long enough to be unimpressed by a masked bank robber waving a gun in her face. And despite the story she tells them all, Estelle hasn't really come to the apartment to view it for her daughter, and her husband really isn't parked outside parking the car. As police surround the premises and television channels broadcast the hostage situation live, the tension mounts and even deeper secrets are slowly revealed. Before long, the robber must decide which is the more terrifying prospect, going out to face the police or staying in the apartment with this group of impossible people.
So, what did you think about Anxious People? And remember, no spoilers.
So I really enjoyed this book. I liked the mix of humor and the serious undertones. The characters were all really enjoyable, and then the unraveling of the plot was really good, and I enjoyed that. So just overall, I really loved this book. I had fun reading it. I don't remember any point in time where I was like, man, I don't want to read this. Like, I was like, yeah, I want to read it. In fact, I'm pretty sure I read the bulk of it in one day.
I'm right there with you. I really enjoyed this book. Didn't know what I was going to like it or not going into it, but it was great. It was very entertaining. I thought it read a lot like a movie script or a TV script would. Very, very quick. I could definitely like visualize everything in my head in the same way I do if I ever do read a script. The characters were really well done. The development was really good. I also read it really quickly. It's a relatively quick read, but it's easy to just keep going because there's always like, I want to know more. I want to know more. What's happening next? So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I will echo this. I knew I would like this one because I love Fredrik Backman. I've read lots of his books. So I was excited to read this one. I loved all the character arcs. I loved getting more in-depth into the characters. I really liked some of the plot twists that happen later on in the spoiler section. I thought that they were really well done and really had me questioning things about myself. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I don't think, like Barbara said, like I don't think there was ever a time where I was like, gotta finish this book. I think that I probably listened to it in like 2 or 3 days. It was pretty quick and I really enjoyed the whole thing.
So like always, we're not going to go into our individual ratings right now. Got to wait till the end for that. But our group score for Anxious People was an 8.16 repeating out of 10. So would you recommend this book? Yes, absolutely. I would. I was thinking about this and I really don't know who I wouldn't recommend this book to. I think this book has something to appeal to almost any reader. So yeah, it's an easy book to recommend. It's easy to read. It's incredibly entertaining. Even if you're not a huge reader, I think this is one that would be fun to read because, like I said, it does read more like a movie. So yeah, I absolutely would recommend it.
I've actually already recommended this to several people. I feel like Fredrik Backman, like his style of writing is appealing to a wide variety of people. I don't think that he falls in necessarily a niche category like some of the high fantasy stuff does, where it's like, oh, I wouldn't recommend it to somebody who doesn't like fantasy. Like I feel like with his stuff, really, it could be, it could relate to a vast audience. So, yeah, definitely would recommend it.
Yeah, echo what you guys said. I would have no trouble recommending this book, and I have a few friends that I'm already going to be recommending this to, or maybe even buying, as I enjoy buying people books that I like and be like, here you go, you must read this now. So I definitely would recommend this book. I really enjoyed it, and like Lauren said, I think it has a broad audience because it appeal isn't like so niche like some other books we've read.
All right. For those of you leaving us now, don't forget to give us a rating if you like us and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Our handle in both places is at Badass Lit Pod. We would love to hear from you. If you've got a book you want us to read, let us know. And now for a short preview of our next episode. Next month, we are reading These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, and Lauren's going to give us a little brief synopsis.
The year is 1926, and Shanghai hums to the tune of debauchery. A blood feud between two gangs runs the streets red, leaving the city helpless in the grip of chaos. At the heart of it all is 18-year-old Juliette Kai, a former flapper, who has returned to assume her role as the proud heir of the Scarlet Gang, a network of criminals far above the law. Their only rivals in power are the White Flowers, who have fought the Scarlets for generations. And behind every move is the heir, Roma Montagov, Juliette's first love and first betrayal. But when gangsters on both sides show signs of instability culminating in clawing their own throats out, the people start to whisper of a contagion, a madness, of a monster in the shadows. As the deaths stack up, Juliette and Roma must set their guns and grudges aside and work together. For if they can't stop this mayhem, then there will be no city left for either of them to rule. Perfect for fans of The Last Magician and descendant of the Crane, this heart-stopping debut is an imaginative Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1920s Shanghai, the rival gangs, and a monster in the depths of the Huangpu River.
I'm really excited for this book.
I've already started. I like it.
Out there.
I started and I didn't realize that it was going to be a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, and I was like, man, this sounds familiar.
You're like,
in fact, while we were sitting, while Lauren and I were waiting for Barbara to connect, she literally asked, "Is it a Romeo and Juliet retelling?" Because I kind of feel like it is.
This seems
I was
real
like,
familiar.
they weren't even that creative because, like, Montagov, come on,
right? And Juliet.
Remember, the second part of this episode is going to be an in-depth look at Anxious People. So if you do want to read it, stop listening now and come back when you're done.
My bulky blender was such a pain to use, I ended up hardly ever using it at all. But the BlendJet 2 portable blender makes blending so easy and convenient, I use it just about every day. BlendJet 2 is portable, so you can blend up a smoothie at work, a protein shake at the gym, or even a margarita at the beach. It's small enough to fit in a cup holder, but powerful enough to blast through tough ingredients like ice and frozen fruit with ease. BlendJet 2 is whisper quiet, so you can make your morning smoothie without waking up the whole house. It lasts for 15 plus blends and recharges quickly via USB-C. Best of all, BlendJet 2 cleans itself. Just blend water with a drop of soap and you're good to go. With over 30 plus colors and patterns to choose from, there's a BlendJet 2 to complement just about any style. I rock the ruby metallic print myself because I'm clearly a certified badass. What are you waiting for? Go to blendjet.com and grab yours today, and be sure to use the promo code BADALitPod12. That's BADALitPod12 to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. No other portable blender on the market comes close to the quality, power, and innovation of the BlendJet 2. They guarantee you'll love it or your money back. Blend anytime, anywhere with the BlendJet 2 portable blender. Go to blendjet.com and use the code BADALitPod12 to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. Shop today and get the best deal ever.
Hey guys, my name's Abby and I co-host the Book Life podcast with my best friend Mo. We cover fantasy, sci-fi, and historical fiction books and talk book-related topics like our favorite character types, world building, and books versus their movies. New episodes drop every Monday on your favorite platform. Now, back to your show.
Now, for those of you sticking around for the spoilers, here we go. All right, we're going to start off like we always start off and figure out who gets the Badass Character Award. Barbara, who was your nomination?
So this was kind of hard to decide because I feel like all of them kind of have little moments where they couldn't have gotten this award. But I would have to just give it to the bank robber because she's the one who started it all, and she literally tried robbing the bank for her children. So that's kind of why I was like, well, might as well give it to her.
So for this one, I voted for Zara. Zara is the it's Lauren and Barbara are probably right now kind of think that's kind of an odd choice, but she's the super rich bank executive that honestly comes off as kind of a bitch for the entirety of the book. But when you really get her story and you figure out like what's going on in her life and the things that she's overcome, one of those being like suicidal ideation, I think that Zara deserves the badass award. That, and there are a couple times where like normal people would be afraid of like a gun being waved in their face, and she was just kind of like, ugh, what are you doing? Like, get away from me. Like very, very blasé about the fact that they were being robbed.
I feel like she was a bit on the spectrum. I feel like a little.
Yeah, I
like,
definitely
maybe.
read that way.
Yeah, same. But that's just me.
But Zara was my nominee for the badass.
I can see that because she was hilarious. I really enjoyed Zara.
Zara was my runner-up. However, Estelle, you guys, come on, let's talk about Estelle. She's the real MVP. I mean, this little old lady, super cute little old lady, right? Just like
Heavily drinks.
gives zero shits, right, about the fact that they're getting robbed. Just very like, I don't know, down to earth, very like point blank, like just not really much of a filter, says what's on her mind. I just really liked Estelle. So what do we do for a three-way?
I was about to ask that. I think this is the first time we've
first
had
time.
a
They all get
three-way
it.
difference.
All of them get it in their own right.
Probably not how it works. I don't know.
What do you mean? Everyone gets a participation.
It's like the YMCA, you guys. Everybody wins.
Everybody gets a participation badass trophy.
There we go.
Yeah.
But like Barbara said, I mean, it's true. I mean, you could have picked any of the cast of the ensemble cast and for this award, and I think any of us could have found a justification for why they deserved it. There were a lot of different characters and a lot of different reasons that they would have won this award. So that's fine. They can all have it. Speaking of characters, let's talk about the group of characters before we start in on our discussion questions. The first one is Jim and Jack. Jim and Jack are the police officers in the story. Jim is the father and Jack is his son. They are the ones that happen to be working in the day that this happens, and they get involved in the sense that they're attempting to negotiate with the bank robber, and some hilarity ensues with some of the things that their hijinks, and the fact that at one point Jim sees a box of Christmas lights and thinks that there's a bomb on one of the floors that the bank robber has left, which is kind of a comical thing. But you also got a really sweet father-son story with them too, as you learn more about their relationship. And it was kind of a fun, I feel like it was kind of a fun extra story that we got from the book, because obviously the core story is happening inside the apartment, and that story doesn't really involve Jim and Jack for the most part, but we got a really nice chunk of a side story with them, and I really enjoyed their story, actually.
Well, I thought it was interesting how they are connected with certain people also in the main cast as well, and I really found that interesting. And yeah, their dynamic I thought was really cool.
Well, and how they circled back at the end with, was it Jim or Jack?
Jack the son, right? You're saying
No,
that he met
the Jim was the one that ultimately let the robber go.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
And so, like, we got more character arc there for him, and just kind of like full circle that story.
Right.
For being what I would consider not part of the core ensemble cast of this book, we really get a lot of story arc and a lot of backstory for Jim
because we learn
Jack
about
too.
Jack growing up and why he picked to be a policeman, why Jim didn't want him to be a policeman. We get stories about Jim's wife, Jack's mom, and how she kind of helped them be who they are today. So I would say they're bigger characters than, say, like Roe and maybe like Leonard and stuff like that.
I would say bigger than Leonard. I don't know about Roe.
Also, I feel like if we circle back to like anybody could get the badass award, Roe cannot get the badass award, and neither can Roger.
Oh,
the end.
Okay.
Well, you know what? Just because of that, we're going to give those two characters to Lauren when we get to them so we can find out why. But our next character is Zara. Barbara, do you want to explain Zara?
Sure. So, like Michael mentioned, she is the bank manager, and we find out that she is connected with some of the people, Jack, because are we going to say, like, the overall story happens because 10 years ago, this man borrowed money from the bank, lost the money, and then had no way of paying for it. So then he jumps off the bridge and he leaves a note behind. And Zara is the person that he had talked to at the bank who said, sorry, I can't help you. And he wrote this letter to her, and she has kept it for all these 10 years. And then she decides to go and look at open houses that have a window to that bridge, because obviously she's holding on to this guilt. So that is how Zara is connected to the 10-year ago story plot that kind of set this whole thing in motion, realistically speaking. But she is sarcastic. She's very deadpan humor. She says exactly what she's thinking. But obviously she feels really guilty about what happened. She's in therapy. She's seen a therapist, and creepily enough, she creeped on the therapist and knows exactly who she is. Like, she's very calculated. She seems really cold. I did read her as someone in the spectrum, just of how she interacted with people and how her thoughts were about certain situations. I really liked her character. She was very enjoyable to me. I really enjoyed her. Am I missing anything else about Zara?
She definitely came off to like the average person as maybe a little bit of a B, like Michael said.
I never read her as that.
I felt like just her bluntness and like her kind of she was very conceited, I felt like, too, at times. Like, kind of came off as a little bit condescending to the other people.
Okay.
I think that she did that. We learned that because, like, that was like her armor.
For sure. No, I'm not saying she is a B. I'm saying, like, she definitely came off that way to other people, and I think it was a defense mechanism for sure.
Yeah.
I liked Zara, though.
I did too. Really, really enjoyed her character. Oh, and she loves heavy metal music also.
She does, which was amazing.
That was the best quirk that they could have given her.
There's a lot of good heavy metal in Sweden. Anyway, next character we can talk about is the bank robber. Lauren, do you want to tell us about the bank robber?
Sure. So this was like the big plot twist that I was referring to earlier. It is a woman who attempts to rob a bank to get rent money so she doesn't lose her kids to CPS, and ends up inadvertently taking all of these people hostage. So I thought this was really well done by the author because, like, I read several discussion question follow-ups after the fact, and it's like automatically your internal bias, subconscious bias or whatever, part of you just assumes that the bank robber is male. And I feel like there were a ton of comments to it, like on Reddit or whatever I was on, that were like, oh, I didn't assume that. And everybody's like, nah, if you didn't assume that, you're lying. Like, everybody just like read it as that. The automatic kind of assumption that I think that the author assumes that people will make
100%
is that it was
done on purpose.
It was like intentionally left out to where your internal bias would play a role, and then you would have it be a plot twist. So the bank robber herself, I felt like was a good person at heart. Like she just didn't want to lose her kids. She just like was at a loss. She had maybe just a lack of coping skills and just a lack of
She was desperate.
completely desperate. And then like just really kind of cute in the sense that like once she did end up with these hostages, she's like, I don't know, what do you guys want to do? Like kind of thing, like
Right.
how do I proceed here? And so I thought it was
very non-threatening.
It was really
not like if I was gonna get held up, it would I would choose someone like her.
right. So I liked that character actually.
I did too.
Me too.
It was interesting to learn more about her story and what drove her to do this, and you could see the just desperation. That was all it was, and the fierce protectiveness of her children. How small she made herself because of her husband and her situation.
Ex-husband.
Sure, ex-husband.
Anyway, moving on from the bank robber, we'll talk about her a lot later. Next character is Anna-Lena. Anna-Lena is an older woman who is there with her husband, Roger, who Lauren will, I'm sure, apparently grill into in a minute. But Anna-Lena and her husband, Roger, are there to look at the apartment. They have been buying and renovating apartments and then flipping them as something to do after they retired. I didn't really enjoy either of their characters, to be honest. If I had a least favorite characters, I thought that Anna-Lena was kind of annoying, to be honest, in a lot of the chapters that she was in. But
oh, really?
That was just me.
That's because she had a shitty husband.
Okay, whoa. This is aggressive. I didn't think
kidding.
She was annoying.
I liked Anna-Lena. I thought she was sweet.
I liked her too.
She was
just trying. Oh, wow. She was so. Both of them come off as really annoying at the beginning because they're trying to like make sure the property gets lowballed so they don't have to spend so much money on it. So then they're like, they have this little script that they go off like, is there a draft and all this other stuff. But like
that was pretty
once
funny,
you actually get to the core of who they are as characters, I really enjoyed it because like she once again flipping this script on you. She is the one who was the bread maker in the family. Like she's the one who kept getting promoted and all this other stuff, and her career just soared, while Rogers kind of stayed stagnant because he was like, hey, focus on you, whatever. And so she did, and I feel like that was really cool of him to do that. And not most dudes would be like, hey, I would love for to see you climb the, glass ceiling and shatter it type thing. And then by the time she was like, okay, it's your turn, like they were retired and he couldn't do that with his work because it's been too long, and that whole dynamic. And then she's just trying to make him feel better and creepily hired the rabbit dude, which hilarious. That whole scene was just really funny.
That was really
so funny. I don't know. I didn't find her annoying. Like at the beginning, I was like, "Oh my god, these people are so freaking annoying." But like once you get to the core of,
I thought that
their
they were
story,
both a little bit annoying towards the beginning. I don't hate Roger. Okay, like I think that he is the quintessential like man's man, and it seemed like Anna-Lena, like he was very dismissive of like her, I don't know, like desire to settle down and like buy a house and like actually have her own.
But did she
home.
tell
I don't know.
him?
We don't get that.
See, that's the problem. Yeah. The communication there is that she never told him she wanted all this stuff. She just did stuff to appease him because she thought that's what he wanted.
That's
so I think
true.
if there's the whole issue with miscommunication. And if he actually saw the stuff that he did for her, he loved her in his own way. And I feel like that was actually really sweet. But that's just...
You're not wrong. I just felt like I felt bad for Anna-Lena because I felt like he was always focused on like moving on and flipping the next house, and she really wanted to just be with him and settle down and like have their own space. And I could see it from both sides though.
I was thinking about it, and I don't think it's fair to say I thought the character was annoying. I think I found it annoying because I both listened and read this book, and I think that the voice they used in the audiobook for her, that was annoying. And because I listened before I read. When I was reading the book, that was the voice that I heard in my head, and it was very annoying. So that's I think that might be part of it. Not anything against the person who was reading. It's just she had one of, I don't know. It was just, I'll have to play it for you.
Was
later,
it different people for different characters, or is it just the same person, just inflections were different for characters?
I think it was the same person using different inflection for different characters.
Gotcha. Okay.
But the voice that she chose to use for Anna-Lena was...
was not great.
I mean, it was a well-done voice, but it was probably an intentionally kind of like that annoying, like sweet old lady voice.
Oh. Annoying sweet old lady
I'll
voice.
play you a little bit later so you can hear what I'm talking about.
Fair.
Anyway, I think we covered Roger as well there because Lauren talked about him. So we'll move on from there to. Do you have anything else to say about Roger before we move past him?
Well, he's the retired engineer, like I said, with Anna-Lena, and I think he just wanted to be helpful and useful, and I feel like he lost that sense of himself because he wanted to do that and he didn't get that for his job, and when he did, then he had to retire early because he got hurt, and then he actually does want grandkids, but neither of their children want children, so then he kind of gets butthurt about that. Instead of just communicating the fact that he does want to be a grandfather, he tries to flip houses instead to feel fulfilled in life, and I think that's kind of why he comes off that way. But like I said, like towards the end you can see like he helps Julia and Ro buy this house, and he tells them like, oh, this is how you fix this and this is how you do that. So that's why I think he has well intentions. Is just
he definitely redeemed himself at the end. I'll say that.
Yeah, just he loves and shows affection in his own way, and unfortunately, him and Anna-Lena need to have better communication skills.
Yeah, and I think that's accurate. I mean, that was one of the things that she was constantly telling other people, oh, it's just the way Roger shows his love. It's different. That's actually pretty close to how the voice was in the audiobook.
Ew, gross.
And I think that it was hard to believe that at first until you finally saw the way that Roger did show his love towards the end of the novel. And like Lauren said, that was a little bit of a redeeming factor for his character. Let's see. Next, we'll just talk about these in couples. All right, so moving on from there, let's talk about them in couples since that was easy for Anna-Lena and Roger. So the next couple is Julia and Ro. Julia is Ro's wife. I feel like I said that, but Julia is Ro's wife. They're looking for an apartment, her and her wife. Julia is very, very pregnant, and they've been shopping for apartments for a long time. Ro is the wife. Ro and Julia are spouses. I don't know.
Why are you struggling
Lauren phrased it this way?
What?
Anyway, they're both looking to buy the apartment. They've been looking at lots of apartments. Ro finds something wrong though with every single apartment they've looked at, and Julia's getting really fed up with it, and she just wants to find somewhere to live and to get settled into before this kid comes along. And that's the bulk of their story that we get inside is kind of their relationship, and they have a little bit of headbutting that happens, and then there's a conversation that happens in the book between Julia and a few of the other female characters that it's talking about, where she talks about the original of their relationship, how they fell in love and all of that, and you kind of get a little bit of the backstory.
And Ro eats the artificial limes.
Oh, no, she didn't eat. It was a real lime.
Oh,
she
just ate it lime. She just ate the...
She just ate it like an apple.
Oh, that's right. She ate it.
Yeah.
She ate like
the rind.
The whole thing.
Isn't that what it's called?
Yes,
the rind.
That's what it was.
Because she's a nervous eater. So my thing of them is Ro is worried about being
a parent
because she her dad was amazing, and she always had her dad, and her dad, if I'm not mistaken, passed away, and so she's struggling with being a parent and hoping that she can fill his shoes, essentially, because he was such a great father to her. And Julia never knew her father. Like, he was a piece of poop, essentially, and it was just her and her mom. And so she doesn't have she's just like, oh, I know I'm going to do better because my mom was great, but my dad wasn't around, so all this stuff. So I thought their relationship was really interesting, and how they came together, B, they were always kind of fighting with each other, but maybe in an endearing way, and then see what was going on with them.
I didn't grow to like them until towards the end, honestly. Because they seemed very toxic, kind of. They just seemed like they were always in conflict. They were always annoyed with each other. They didn't really seem like they liked each other that much until you kind of got more of the backstory. And towards the end, it was a little bit redeeming. But throughout the book, I was like, why are they even having procreating right now? Why are they even having a kid? They clearly are not compatible. But it came full circle, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that definitely happened with most of the characters. You kind of they were all had their own little annoying quirks and things, and then as the book went on, you kind of learn more about them, and it all came full circle. Next character is Leonard the rabbit. I'm going to let Lauren talk about the rabbit.
Leonard the rabbit, who has no flaws. Just kidding. So he's
except for the fact that he walks around in tiny whities.
So he's a middle-aged actor. I'm going to put actor in quotation marks. who also runs a
I
side
think that's
business
fair.
called No Boundaries Leonard. And he calls himself a professional interrupter. And so he gets hired to like crash weddings and crash other events,
Birthday parties, children's
open
things.
houses, obviously.
Anything that needs to
Basically,
be crashed.
just anything that needs to have like an interruption that you don't want to come from a family member or yourself. You just hire him, and he comes and makes a scene and distracts from whatever's going on. And I liked Leonard. He was pretty funny.
He was hilarious.
Yeah, he was pretty funny. Just the whole like the fact that Bachman even came up with this like
right
as a trope, like
what?
I've never heard of this before. I'm sure it's got to be a thing. I mean, I guess
it has to.
I guess I should have looked it up. Like, is this like a brainchild of Bachman? It can't be. It's got to be like people probably do this. And then I'm thinking, like, could I get paid for that? Like,
right? I would love this job. I would like to just put on a rabbit hat in my tidy whities and pretend I'm taking a shit in an open house, so it lowers down the price. Like, what is that?
Right? Yeah, I thought that he was.
What
great.
I thought of was, and I just had to look this up because I couldn't remember the name of the movie, but it was a Dane Cook movie called My Best Friend's Girl. And Dane Cook he's effectively a Leonard in that movie. He's paid to, in his character, he was paid to be an asshole, and he would get hired by guys who just got dumped to go and be a total a-hole to their ex to try to get them to see that, oh my gosh, the guy dumped was actually better than this guy. And then
same vein.
Yep. Very similar. I mean, he was effectively acting. So that's what I thought of when we got Leonard. It was a pretty comic. It was an interesting and unexpected aspect of the book.
Well, because
sure.
You definitely it leads you to believe
I was not
that
expecting
some
that.
infidelity or something is happening, is what it leads you to believe,
right?
Because like it's presented as like this is like a secret lover or whatever.
Yeah,
and then she's like, it's not what you think,
right? Like that's what you would assume is like, okay, she's cheating on Roger with this dude, and it's actually, I mean, she's cheating in the sense that Roger thought he was doing such a great deal and lowering the prices down in all these homes, but really it's just Leonard being a weirdo and throwing spaghetti on people.
Right. No, Roger, it's not what you think.
That is literally what the audiobook voice sounded like.
I would not be able to handle that. Like her voice, that was not her voice in my head. It was bad.
And that's why, and Roger, I mean, they both were just kind of obnoxious.
I also didn't picture them that old. I, like, newly retired, I was picturing them around, like, the 67, 68 range.
Well,
not
I
like
did too,
80s.
but then, like, the voice was very much like, oh, Roger.
Next character is Estelle.
Look, I just pictured the cutest old lady, right? And I love old people. I love them. And so she's the elderly woman who, unbeknownst to the reader until the very end, so like we don't realize until...
Well, but there's hints dropped.
There's hints, okay, Barbara, but it's not revealed to us lay people.
True.
Until the end that she actually lives in the apartment that's for sale. So
yes,
it is
actually
her home,
her apartment.
Which is awkward too, because like if you think about it, going through an open house, if you think about like the things that people
all the people are making these rude I was gonna say Zara's like, this is atrocious carpet and this is a hideous what is it, sofa and all this stuff, and I was like, the poor Estelle.
I know, so awkward. So yeah, so she actually lives in the apartment that's for sale. Her husband, she's like, oh, my husband's parking the car or whatever, he's actually deceased, which is sad, and she basically just wants company, really. She's just lonely. And so her daughter wanted her to sell the house because it's too big for her and wanted her to move in with them or something like that. So her daughter basically thinks that she's, getting older and she needs to get rid of that place because she doesn't need that much space or whatever. And she's like, so she agreed to list it, but then begrudgingly, and then basically just pretended like she was a prospective buyer. But she is feisty, she's wise, she's hilarious.
She drinks wine in her closet.
She drinks wine in her closet.
She smokes in her closet.
As everybody does. Like, what? Yeah. It's a normal thing.
I just thought it was funny because, like, when she was like, oh, like, do you want some food? And people are like, what do you mean food? She's like, oh, I'm sure people have food here. And then that's, like, the little hints that you get, like, how would you know there's food here if you didn't live here? And then she's like, oh, do you guys want some wine? And she, like, knows exactly where to go in the closet to get the wine. Julia's like, how did you know that was going to be there? And she's like, oh, it's just because I used to hide wine here, so everyone must hide wine here.
Well, for the non-Barbara readers that are part of the podcast.
I just thought it was funny, those little
I did not pick up on
nods.
I didn't pick up on it along the way. But looking back after I knew the knowledge at the end,
yeah,
I went back and I was like, oh, duh. Like,
yeah. But I just thought those little drops of tidbit of info when she's like, that really
didn't pick up on it along the way. But I loved Estelle. She was just really also just very honest with everyone. Like, I felt like everyone kind of took sides with certain, like, parts of the couple throughout. Like, different couples, they'd be talking and then there'd be, like, clear, like, oh, that guy's, like, he's stupid, you're blah, 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 whatever. But I felt like Estelle was always very, like, asking very poignant questions and, like, she was just very honest and thoughtful, and I liked her.
I also liked how the whole story wrapped up with her offering the bank robber to stay.
I did too.
At her house or at this apartment or house, whatever.
It's because she's a saint.
Yeah, and just like how that wrapped up and stuff like that, and it was really, really sweet. I thought
it's great little grandma.
And the final character is the real estate agent.
It's the most annoying character in the freaking book. Yes. Plus, I also didn't get the humor.
I did not understand that.
I didn't understand it until Michael had to Google it, and apparently it's a saying there. That's why.
It's a saying where?
Do you get it? Do you understand it? It's a joke. Do you get it?
It's a lost in translation type thing, because, like, we don't have that saying here, or I've never heard of that saying.
Are you talking about, like, how, like, with her name or her, like, title or whatever?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
The title of her company.
I didn't
And I was like, Michael, I think I'm stupid because I'm not understanding, like, the irony or like the humor in the name.
So
and then
what?
He had to
so
Google
it again so that our readers can understand as well.
House Tricks. It was House Tricks.
Yes, the real estate's her company's name was House Tricks, and it was like this. She thought it was just hilarious. This play on word of House Tricks, which is a colloquialism for just saying like "How's it going?" or "How are you?" It's merely something that.
They say
slang that some people use, and none of the three of us had ever heard that.
Is that like different? Like they literally just say House Tricks.
Yeah, that's literally it. It's not lost in translation.
No?
It is an English.
That is an
thing.
English thing. Okay, lost in translation for me because English is not my first language, but I've literally never heard anyone say that.
Like I'm telling you right now, when I googled it, I was looking at it on the Cambridge University Dictionary website. It is an English thing. It's just not a colloquialism. It's
British English.
I was familiar with.
Yeah, it says. Perhaps. Let's see, an idiom for informal. How are you? And then it says used as a friendly greeting. House Tricks in your neck of the woods. Never.
If someone said that to me, I'd be like, "What are you talking about?"
Never heard of that.
But anyway, she was annoying to me because at the very beginning, I'm like, "Oh my god!" But like, you could, I was like, "This woman is the bank robber," because she's really, really nervous. Because that's what originally I thought was the bank robber was her. Because I was like, she will not shut up, and she doesn't seem like she's very knowledgeable about anything. And like every time he would ask her a question, she'd be like, what? Let's go and talk about the metrics of the house over here. And I was like, what is she doing? So I thought she was the bank robber in the beginning. But she, alas, was a real person who was just hiding in the closet for a while.
Very just ditzy.
Pretty funny.
Just ditzy and pretty worthless as a real estate agent, not gonna lie. Oh, man.
All right, moving on to our discussion questions. The first one is, which of the hostages' personal stories resonated most strongly with you and why?
So I'm not really sure any one in particular resonated with me per se, but that doesn't mean like I didn't enjoy getting to know them. I really enjoyed all the characters actually, and the more I learned about their background, the more I enjoyed the characters, because like I think we've mentioned previously, like they were a bit annoying, or some of them had like, ooh, this is kind of unlikable of them. And then the more we got to know them, the more we got their backstory. I really enjoyed it. To honestly, all the characters except for the real estate agent, we don't really get too much about her. I don't think there's like a personal story that really resonated with me. Like I don't know, but that doesn't mean I didn't. Like, you don't have to completely connect with people to enjoy or empathize the story. So like that didn't detract from my enjoyment of the book, of not like be like, yes, this is my person, I really like them.
Barbara, I really am surprised. I thought that you would deeply connect with Leonard.
I mean, if I had to pick, Leonard would definitely be the one. That is very much more like me, you know? Like, I get home,
since we don't have a
I
video
take off
podcast,
my
Barbara,
clothes, I put on this pink rabbit hat on.
she's wearing it right
mask.
now. For those of you listening, she's
Yes,
wearing a
and
bunny
I like
mask
to
right
walk
now.
around in my skivvies. So you're not wrong, Lauren.
I mean,
This is
that's really
definitely
what
mine.
attracted Michael to you, right? I mean, there's a kink for everyone.
I mean, what's not to be attracted to? You know, like.
Anyway, for me, I, like Barbara said, I also don't think I really resonated with one character in particular. I think you could say I resonated with aspects of many of the characters. Like, there were parts of their stories that I resonated with, but I also agree with what Barbara said, that I don't feel like you have to like completely see yourself in a character to enjoy a story. And especially in a story like this with an ensemble cast, you're never going to resonate with every single character. But yeah, I think aspects of each of them, but not strongly to one in particular.
Yeah, I will echo that. I didn't necessarily be like, oh, this is like somebody that I super relate to. Obviously, Estelle's feistiness, I mean, yes. But I probably resonated the most with the bank robber, honestly, just in the sense of being a mom, being willing to do whatever you have to do for your kids.
Robbing banks.
Robbing banks, you know. I think I might be a little bit better, and I'm just kidding. I would be useless in a hostage situation on either end, taking the hostages or being one. But I could relate to being willing to do whatever you have to do for your kids. But otherwise, they were all interesting characters. And yeah, like you guys said, I don't think it takes away from a story if you can't like personally relate.
Yeah, not at all.
Because they all definitely were really well written.
Yeah. I would like to mention I enjoyed Zara's deadpan humor, because
Yes.
I just really enjoyed that kind of humor too. All the humor in this book was really amazing. I really enjoyed it.
Have you read
overall.
other Fredrik Backmans?
I haven't, no.
Oh, you would like them.
But after reading this book, I am very excited to pick up the other books.
Yeah.
If this is how
The
it is.
humor is
I
very
really
similar.
enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoyed this type of humor.
So next question, at what point did you realize the bank robber was female? What does this reveal to you about Fredrik Backman as a writer, or about your own subconscious biases?
So excited for this question.
When did I realize the bank robber was female? When the book told me the bank robber was a female. I did not pick up on any of the hints that Barbara's going to tell you about in a little bit that she picked up on. And like Lauren mentioned earlier, like it really does make you sit back and think about your biases, and the fact that, like, because it was a bank robber, I just immediately thought it was a man. So yeah, that was definitely something that made me think. I thought that was very clever of the author to do. I think it says a lot about Fredrik Backman in the sense that there's, I think you could reread this book in particular multiple times and take something different away from it each time. I think there's layers to his work, and I think that that's really impressive to me. And in this case, this was just one of those layers. He wrote it in a way that intentionally didn't mention the gender so that you would probably fall into your unconscious bias, and then be like, oh God, I can't believe I did that, when you find out that it is a woman. But so yeah, I thought that was brilliant of Backman.
Yep, I agree. This is one of the best side plot twist type things that Backman did with this novel, in my opinion, because most readers spend the entire novel thinking or assuming that the bank robber is male. I don't know why we have this bias. I feel like I personally, after I read this book, went back and tried to rack my brain, read that when I have ever read a news article about a robber that was female, and I haven't. Like, I cannot recall ever having read a news article or like a news headline about a woman robbing a bank or robbing like any kind of big substantial, like, make newsworthy type thing. So I think that like the media also plays into it, probably, because
Bonnie and Clyde.
Okay, Michael, I'm talking about most generally speaking in my lifetime. Okay. But yeah, so media probably, I don't know, plays into the bias a little bit too, because, you know, there's got to be like lots of women out there committing crimes that just maybe doesn't make the news. Or maybe it's less violent crimes. Maybe, I don't know.
Or we're just better at getting away with it.
Or we're better at getting away with it.
Wow.
But there is a bias, and I think that it probably is. I think Barbara would be the exception to the rule in seeing some of the things that she noticed. I didn't realize that the bank robber was female until they said it blatantly in the book. But it definitely did make me examine my own subconscious biases that I did not even realize that I had. So I think that's pretty powerful of Backman to be able to do that.
To be completely fair to you, Lauren, I made the Bonnie and Clyde connection after realizing my unconscious bias and being like, and looking up female bank robbers.
You Googled that. That's cheating.
And then I was like, oh my God, how did I not think of Bonnie
And then you're
Parker?
making
Like,
me
she's
feel
like an
dumb for that.
iconic female criminal in history.
And then you just pulled that shit on me and made me feel
Who's
dumb.
been sensationalized? Isn't that how you say it?
Yeah, Bonnie and Clyde were. I mean, their story, the true story is pretty sensational. With that being much more sensationalized.
Well, anyway, I would say I guessed fairly early into the book that the robber was a female. Especially, actually, I think it was like maybe even the second chapter, and there's one very distinct instance when Jack is talking to the real estate agent and he asks like, oh, did he do this, this, and this? And the real estate agent answers, the bank robber did this. And she didn't say, yeah, he did this, which is uncommon. Normally when you're having a conversation with someone, you use the same pronoun that the other person used. So the only reason why she wouldn't have repeated that is because either she's trying to keep the secret of what gender the bank robber is, or it was done intentionally. So I was like, light bulb, something's going on here. And then we get fairly recent within the book of the bank robber side of the story, as in like what led her to the life of crime, aka robbing the bank in the first place. And when she's telling her story, I was like, where in the world? And this is me being biased here. 100% I'm going to admit it. Because she said that her partner cheated on her. And I was like, there's no way a woman would cheat. Because normally, statistically speaking, guys are more likely to cheat. And so after I read that, I was like, it has to be a woman. Because it's not the dude cheating, or like he got cheated on. The bank robber is a woman, because everything that she's describing that happened to her, like try not to be stepping on his toes about like, oh, you can take everything, being cheated on, and how that happened. Like it was her boss that was, that he was cheating on her with, and all this other stuff. I was like, it just sounded to me like this would be a woman's scenario of this happening to her, because women are more passive in relationships, or we are led to believe that we're supposed to be passive in the relationships, and she didn't want to be a bother to anybody, and that's why she didn't get like the food stamps, and that's why she didn't ask for help and all this other stuff. And I was like, this just, to me, was really sus, and that's why I was like, it has to be a woman. Like this is going to be the whole thing. And then after deciding it was a woman, I was like really narrowly focused on all these little hints that every time they mentioned the bank robber and the guys, both Jim and Jack would be like, okay, he is doing this. And at one point they're interviewing the teller of the bank, and she's like, why are you assuming it's a, like, it's, or are you assuming gender is binary? Like, what if it's this and this? And I was like, that's such an interesting, like, way of diverting the reader's attention to not mention the pronoun of the bank robber. So I thought this was really well done. Those are the little bits and pieces that I picked up on that I thought was really done well. But I did suffer the subconscious biases in the sense, like I said, like when the bank robber was explaining the situation of what happened to her, I was like, there's no way that would happen to a guy. There's just no way. So maybe that's also my problem there. But I love this. I thought there was such a cool twist in the story. I really, really enjoyed it.
Did you find any characters dislikable or immensely irritating? If so, who and why?
So I found different characters irritating at different times, and I think now reflecting on it, it could have something to do with the fact that I was listening and some of the voices were more irritating than others. I
That makes
found
sense.
Ro immensely irritating at random times. I don't know what irritated me so much about her, but
It could have been her voice too, though.
it might
'cause
have been the
she
voice.
Yeah,
talked
what
like,
was her voice?
"Hey, it's like, you know, big,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What?
And then like it just like I don't know, I just found her really irritating at times, but then I also empathized with her at other times, and like I found her less annoying other times. And then I thought Leonard was really irritating at times, but then I thought he was endearing. And I found the real estate agent to be probably the overall most annoying character, just because I felt like she was dumb and like very into this name that like I didn't understand. And so then I just thought she was even more dumb because I'm like, you're
Right.
not funny. Like what?
No one finds you funny, Karen.
So yeah, I mean, there wasn't
I mean, I did think that at one point. Like, how many times is she gonna tell this stupid
Right.
freaking joke?
Yeah, like it was bad. But yeah, I think that Ro was probably the biggest, like, probably undeserving irritation that I had. Like, she didn't really do anything to like make me irritated. I just feel like I think I just like in my head, I'm like, God, I could never date this person. Like, you know, just putting myself in like her partner's shoes or whatever, and like just thinking like, man, wow, like that. And but then again, like I liked her at other times, so you know. And then like Leonard, part of me was like, man, like I could not date this person or like friend this person or whatever. He's so annoying. And then other times I was like, oh, he's kind of sweet. So there wasn't anybody that I was just hated.
Yeah, I don't think there's any one particular character that made me irritated. I actually enjoyed all of them with their all quirks, because I enjoy books where all of these characters aren't like perfect sounding, or they have character flaws, and then you see them throughout the book working through that. And that's what I enjoyed about all these, because the author made a point for you to know, like, oh, these are kind of their issues, and here's how we're going to resolve it and how they're going to better themselves throughout this full day. So I enjoyed that. The only one that really irritated me was just the real estate agent. She wasn't a huge character. I think she was kind of there set up as a red herring, because I originally thought she was the bank robber and pretending, you know, I was like, oh, the bank robber is gonna just walk away pretending she's one of the people in there, and the book kind of sets it up for that, so you can believe that. I fell for it until like later, and I was like, God, she's just really hammering on this freaking name, and it seems to be her only thing, and this has to be the bank robber. And I thought it was like she was doing it intentionally, because A, she was nervous because she didn't want to get caught, and B, she was just once again nervous because she doesn't want to get caught. So it's like she's intentionally kind of playing up the dumbness of her or something like that, and it comes to find out maybe that she is a little ditzy, like that really is how she is. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this woman is kind of annoying, but I enjoyed the annoying because it was funny still. And I was just, you know, like her interactions with people, I was like, this woman is so crazy ditzy that it worked for me.
I definitely remember thinking, man, she is playing dumb. She's got to be guilty of something. And then
right, that's what I'm saying. Like, she had to be guilty of something because she's really laying it thick there.
And
you
then
know?
the realization comes that like she is dumb, and I'm like, oh,
right. You kind of feel bad for her.
Right.
That's yeah.
So I think that after talking about this with you guys, I don't think I found any of the characters truly dislikable or immensely irritating. I found some of their voices in the audiobook that way, but the characters themselves, not so much. Maybe the realtor. I think I can agree with you guys on the real estate agent being annoying, but otherwise, I think that would be it for me. Let's see. Next question: which of the characters are more similar than they realize?
This is an interesting question. I feel like if I actually think about it, I feel like maybe each character kind of has their own, what is it, like, what is the word I'm looking for? Like partner, as far as like what they're similar to.
Counterpart, maybe?
Counterpart, thank you. Yes, they're counterpart. So you have Jim and Jack, I think, are similar, even though Jim is saying like how he's nothing like his son and he didn't want his son to be a police officer because he cares too much. But like Jim is the one who allows the bank robber to get away with the crime. He's the one that helps her and does all this stuff. And he's also the one who kind of pushes it to the side and wasn't going to tell his son. I think if they actually looked at each other, like, they are very similar. Like, Jim is like, oh, he's too good-hearted to be a policeman, but it's like, Jim, bro, you literally effed up the investigation for a person, which is great, you know, like, I feel like that was maybe the right call. And then he was like, oh, like, Jack is just worried because he thinks that the bank robber is out there bleeding out. And that's normally not the first response, I feel like, that people have. It's like, oh, they're an awful human. Hopefully they do die. His first response is like, I need to save this person, you know? And then you learn about like why he feels this way. So I feel like they are actually very similar. I feel like Roe and Roger are similar, and they even actually bond as well because he actually wanted to be a grandpa, wanted to have that, and she is worried about that aspect of life of being a good parent. And he, said like, oh, if you do the things that you're doing now, you're going to be fine and all that stuff. And they kind of had a little like heart to heart, and she explained about her father and all that stuff. So I feel like they were similar. Zara might be the only one who's a little off in her own world. I don't really, but I mean, honestly, she's that kind of, well, yeah, I don't know, maybe Estelle too. Maybe her, I mean, there's a reason why Leonard was attracted to Zara, and Zara didn't seem to mind him. They kind of seemed like they were hitting it off there
I
towards
felt like
the
Zara
end.
and Estelle were both feisty, both very blunt, more so, but not necessarily counterparts.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you're going to touch on the other one, so I will leave that one to you. But I feel like they all had, like, maybe little instances where you could see, like, oh, you're more similar than you think you are to each other.
So I don't have a lot to say because I'm going to add on to what Barbara said and then not steal Lawrence from her. So I think the biggest one that jumped out in the book, though, for me was Jim and Jack. I think, though, it was a little bit different reason for me. I think you saw, as you learn kind of about their individual stories, you see more similarities about them. How Jim is very protective of his son, and that's one of the reasons that he likes working with him to make sure that he's okay and he always comes home and nothing bad ever happens, especially since his wife and Jack's mother died. You see the same thing with Jack. Like, you learn that Jack actually got a better job offer in Stockholm and decided not to go because he needed to stay back and look after his dad, because that's what he thought his mom would have wanted. And so they both are, in a lot of ways, very similar. They both have the same way of caring about people who are maybe not immediately like telling them and showing them and saying, I care so much about you, but this external things that they do to show that they care, as well as the things that Barbara mentioned too. And then I also just will briefly touch on the relationship of, so Roger and Anna-Lena definitely paralleled Roe and Julia in a lot of ways. I'm going to let Lauren talk about that. But I definitely saw the similarity there between not only the individual characters, but their romantic and familial relationships as well.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that I thought Julia and Anna-Lena were more similar than they maybe realized, just because they both wanted a place to call home. They both want someone to share it with. They both want to settle down. Julia is at a transitional point in life where, she's, I guess, biological clock ticking, in the sense that she's literally going to have a baby and wants to have some sort of stability. And Anna-Lena is at like kind of the opposite end, where they were retired and like she just wants some peace and quiet and to be in one place and stay there and call it her own.
All right, let's see. Anxious People is as much an exploration of modern capitalist society as it is a book about people. Discuss the extent to which you agree or disagree with this statement. Whew, and I get to start this one. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of exploration about a modern capitalist society, and in a lot of cases, the negatives of a modern capitalist society. I think you see a lot of that through the lens of Zara, because she is kind of the poster child for capitalism in this book. She's the bank executive. She's in charge of the money. But you see the flip side of that, where she has these really deep-seated feelings where she doesn't like where the system has gone. She talks about frequently how They built a system that is too perfect, and because of that, it's being exploited because the people who created the system didn't take into account human greed. She talks about how the buying a house should be about buying a home. It shouldn't be buying real estate. Should never be an investment. That's not how it should be looked at, and how it's become more and more about the money and less about the people and the community. And I think that in a way that is kind of shining a mirror back on the ugly side of capitalism. And obviously that's something that we can relate to in the States, but that's something that they were talking about in Sweden as well. And I thought that Backman did a really good job, kind of both showing that mirror up to society and the ugly sides of capitalism while still kind of like poking fun at it. I thought it was well intertwined into the story. It was absolutely, there was a lot of that theme intertwined into a lot of the book.
Yep, I think it's about capitalism in the sense that it definitely revolved around a lot of money, like a money issue with the bank robbery itself and the lengths that someone would go in desperation to solve it, and just the problems that money solves versus causes. And it's more so about people following the stories, providing arcs for almost everyone. It definitely explains or shines a light on the capitalist society, like Michael was saying, just the desperation and like the extent to which someone will go. Not that I think that this particular bank robber would have ever harmed anyone, but the fact that the society that is depicted here, which is pretty reflective of our society, put her in a position to feel desperate enough to do something like that because of her financial scenario. Like, I don't know. It's sad.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you guys explained it really, really well. Like Michael said, like Zara explained it well regarding the banks and the attitude that people have taken regarding money and others, and how it was too perfect of a system. I think the whole book happened because of how desperate someone was to have enough money to support her family and the lengths they go to. And just like at the very beginning of the book, it even starts saying like, oh, this all starts 10 years ago when this guy put all his savings for his children in this golden opportunity that would never fault and never have any issues with the bank. Then he loses his money as like the crash happened. And then he goes to the bank and goes, oh my gosh, he lost all my money. What am I going to do? And the bank just goes, not our problem. You know, that's literally the core of what the book is talking about. And it starts from that point. And I think he does a very good job of turning this into or discussing this about modern capitalism and society in a humorous way that isn't just beating you over the head and being like, this is bad and this is why. Like, it's done in such a poignant way, and I really, really enjoy that. But I think it also shows why we are as a society so anxious about things because of this. You know, like, you're constantly worried about, am I going to be able to afford the bills? Is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? Am I going to be able to do this? And we've turned into this society of people who just cannot relax because of it. So it's very well written, very well done. The title is interesting because not once does he say, oh, hey, these people have anxiety. Like, you see why they are the way they are because of what happened.
Yeah, I think that I really like that question that you included, Lauren. I think that's important to talk about. Let's see. Next, how do you think you would react if you found yourself in a hostage situation with a very nervous kidnapper?
I feel like I might actually be decently calm in a hostage situation just with my psychology training. Like, when I think about it, I feel like, I'd freak out and run away. But I think if I were actually presented with that as an issue, I would like to think that I would be able to kind of talk that person down. This particular kidnapper would have been a bit confusing since she was so nervous and unsure of herself. I think that I would have been able to get that read pretty quickly and figure out that, like, she really didn't want to be doing what she was doing and talk to her about it. I would have approached it from more of a crisis management standpoint, tried to de-escalate the situation by talking her through what was going on and things like that, because we have training in like de-escalation and crisis situations for like people who are in psychosis and things like that. So I feel like it would be a similar situation, depending on how serious that person was about using the weapon that they had brought to the hostage situation, you know?
I have no idea. I feel like it's really hard to put yourself in these situations until it happens, but let's just pretend, I guess. I would hope that if we're just talking about this particular scenario, because this is not your stereotypical bank robber, this is not your stereotypical hostage situation where people are aggressive. Like, this lady had no intentions of holding anyone hostage, nor does she think the gun was real, you know, like she thought it was fake. So she's like, oh, it's fine, it's a fake gun, like I'm not gonna hurt anyone. And I don't think she would ever actually even want to hurt anyone. So in this situation, I would hope that I would be as calm and compassionate as these people were to her, since they were all like, after she told them like, hey, this is the situation, this is what's happening, instead of them just like pointing fingers and being like, oh, why didn't you, you know, seek help and stuff like that. Like, they didn't want her to get in trouble. They wanted her to have a second chance at this, and to the point where everyone helped her out. A cop helped her, Estelle let her family move in, all this stuff happened. So I would hope I would act like that.
I feel like, you know, your bunny suit would be pretty disarming to a hostage situation.
I'd probably be the first one shot and be like, who's this bitch? Why is she wearing a bunny?
No,
like, this is a psycho.
It would cause them enough time to pause to where you could fight back.
Yeah, exactly.
Or she would scare the bank robber and she'd get gunned down because she was.
That's what I'm saying. They'd be like, what the fuck? Shoot.
All right, so clearly in this situation, I would just go full John Wick and take out the. No, I'm just kidding. I have no idea. I think that your guys' responses are pretty accurate, though. I don't think anybody really knows what they would do in this situation. I also think that it totally depends on what's going on. Is this the bank robbery that's happening in this book, where the bank robber is very timid and doesn't seem like they're really ready to gun someone down, and there's definitely like a totally different demeanor there? Or is this the bank robbery that happens at the beginning of The Dark Knight, where the Joker and his gang come in and they're just killing everybody that they see? That's going to be a very different experience, and you'd react a very different way. So it's an interesting question, but I think that it's hard to know unless you're in that situation. Let's see. Next question. Several of the characters are connected by events that occurred at the bridge 10 years ago. How have those events changed the course of their lives?
So I know we've touched base on a few of how they're connected, like Zara with, the letter and stuff. So we have Zara with the guy who jumped off the bridge 10 years ago. Jack, the son, was the one who tried stopping the guy from jumping and tried talking to him. It obviously the guy still did it, so he was the one who kind of did that and talked to the police after the fact. And then he kept visiting the bridge after to hopefully catch someone and maybe help them not do it. And in fact, turns out that he did, because he sees a girl, I think roughly around his age, who went to the bridge after seeing what the guy did to do the same thing. But he actually de-escalated the situation. Well, he actually pulled her off the bridge, and she hit her head and doesn't remember, like, she remembers maybe someone helped her, but not really. And then after that, that's when Jack resolved that he wanted to be a policeman because he wanted to help people. Come to find out that Zara was there also going back to the bridge and saw this whole thing happen, realized who the girl was, stalked her maybe? I don't know, was stalked, but she kept tabs of the girl, found out that she turned into a psychologist, decided to use her as her psychologist about what was going on with her life in the letter and all this stuff. Zara is a mastermind. Let me just point that out. Like, everything is very calculated with her. So she knows who this woman is, decides to see her as a psychologist, and is pretty much playing this like weird cat and mouse game with this poor psychologist woman who doesn't know what the heck is going on with her. So that's how they're all connected. Estelle is connected because she was living in this apartment where you get like full frontal view of the bridge and saw this happening, and she was thinking like, maybe had I seen it, I could have maybe helped them type thing. So that's how she is connected. I think that's everyone, right? I think that was all the people from the 10 years ago, and I thought that was super interesting that aspect was the one where I was like, okay, this person's here and this person. I was like that one meme where it's the guy with the red
with all the pins,
like strings. That was
Charlie
me, because
Day.
I was like,
Yep.
okay, this is gonna here and this, and I was trying to connect everybody. I was like, somehow they're all gonna be connected. It's gonna be so cool. Love that. How that kind of was the plot that drove it. I thought Zara doing all that was insane. But yes, it was all very, very interesting. As far as how that changed the course of their lives, well, it shaped who they were. Like I kind of mentioned it, like career choices and the mental health issues, because Zara feels guilty and she's carrying around this letter thinking like she knows that he wrote in the letter saying like, it's your fault, I did this, where in fact come to find out much later in the book at the very end that he literally said like, you did everything you could. And like it's this big weight lifted off of her, because clearly she's still dealing with it 10 years, even though as much as she puts on this blasé like I don't care, she did care. It completely affected her to the point where 10 years later she can't sleep, she can't do all this stuff, she's looking at these houses because all this whole thing. So it was just very interesting. Long story, long-winded.
So, like I told Barbara when I was reading over these questions, I'm not going to answer this one because I had some really interesting conversations with her when I didn't put all this together like she did. And I think that her answer perfectly encapsulates this question. So I am going to pass.
No, I was just going to say, I feel like Barbara did cover everything. Like the meme, I was literally picturing that as you were talking, like all of the push pins and string and Sharpie and all of that. So obviously for several of them, the events changed their lives by keeping them alive. And for the others, it changed by witnessing the traumatic events and then carrying that with them. And that was kind of the extent of what I said, but you made it make more sense.
Yes, agreed. The way you connected everything and the way you see it was a really cool thing that Fredrik Backman did, and the way that you described it was top notch. Final question: what did you think of the ending? So I liked the ending. I thought it was really well done. I thought that it got to a point where it wasn't this. It felt real. It was the whole story. It felt very. The characters felt very real. The world felt very lived in. The ending didn't feel like it was like the perfect ending, like a Disney movie where everything is all happy and woohoo, yay. It felt very real. I liked the way that he wrote it. I honestly, if anything, I was left wanting a little bit more. Because I think that if with a little bit more story, you could have gotten a little bit more closure on some of these things. But I think that was intentional because in real life we don't always get closure on everything, and so I think that he intentionally chose not to give us closure on certain aspects of the story. But I thought it was a well-written ending.
I liked the ending in this one. I felt like each character got their arc. They had closure to an extent. I like a happy ending. This one wasn't too tied in a bow to be cheesy, but it was just the right amount of closure to make me put it down and feel satisfied. Like, I felt like everything was kind of bookended at the sense, like, I didn't feel like I needed anything else. Whereas sometimes we read a book and the ending is like, really? That's what you're going to end on? Like, when is the next book? This one, I felt like I could put it down and like really feel satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the ending. I honestly don't think we needed more. It wrapped up pretty much everyone's story and then kind of connected them all.
All right, so that wraps up our questions. Let's talk about our individual scoring for this book. Barbara, what did you give this one?
I gave this an 8.5. I really enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed all the characters. I enjoyed all the connecting the threads aspect of it. I love that shiz, clearly.
What? No way. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I gave it an 8. I also really enjoyed it. I thought the book was hilarious. It's not often that books make me laugh out loud, and this book did multiple times.
I heard him.
Really...
Just like
that's
that.
How I laugh.
Just
That's how I laugh.
Big belly.
That is. I really enjoyed it. It was easy to read. It was a quick read.
I also gave it an 8 out of 10. I flew through this book, like I said. I think I listened to it maybe in 2 days, maybe 3, which is really fast for me. But it was really good. I love Fredrik Backman. I've loved everything I've read of his so far. I think I've read 4 of his books. I love his sense of humor. I love his ability to make you fall in love with characters and his ability to like just write people. Because I feel like he writes characters, but like some people write characters and then other people create characters as people. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like his characters have
They
more
don't
depth.
feel lived in. Yeah.
Yeah, they feel real.
Yeah. Like I feel like these were like legitimately real people that
Right.
you could connect with, and they all
Julie and Ro could be your neighbors.
right. They had arcs, they had flaws, but they also had, like I said earlier, like it takes a really talented author to make you feel both like irritated and like endearing with certain characters. Like it's, I don't know, it's hard to describe what I'm trying to say, but anyway, I really enjoyed it and will be recommending it in the future.
Yeah, I'm excited to pick up his other books.
Man Called O for Uwe, however you want to say it, is really good.
I didn't realize they made a movie with Tom Hanks.
I haven't seen the movie yet, but the book was amazing. The one with the grandma, I can't remember what the actual title is. Oh, My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry. That one's really good.
Actually, there's a Netflix series for anxious people too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I want to watch it.
I want to watch it now.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of funny. The Tom Hanks movie, I wanted to see. I saw a trailer for it. I was like, oh, it looks really good. I had no idea it was based on a Fredrik Backman book.
Read the book first.
So like we said earlier, our group score for this one was an 8.2 out of 10. We all really enjoyed it. And if you are still listening and haven't read it, we've ruined the story for you, but you should still go read the book. As always, make sure you're following Badass Literature for free in your favorite podcast app. Give us a rating and leave us a review if they allow you to. Super important for us. It helps our podcast get seen. And also lets you give us some direct feedback. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. Our username is at BadassLitPod on both Instagram and Facebook.
Have feedback about today's episode? Contact us by writing to badassliteraturesociety@gmail.com. You can also send us a DM or leave a comment on Instagram or Facebook.
Thanks so much for listening. I'm Michael.
I'm Barbara.
And I'm Lauren.
Bye. And Lauren is still muted.
I was saying some really poignant shit. Just kidding.
Well, too late now.
Too late now.
The world will never know.